How can a 23-year-old from the most marginalized background imaginable change the status quo in her community for good? Come with me to Ghana so we can meet Rose, Madame Rita, and Dorcas. We'll drive to London Heathrow Airport, fly 6.5 hours to Accra, landing tonight, and stay in a hotel near the airport, which is a good thing because we'll be up at 4:30 a.m. for that first flight north to Tamale. After landing in Tamale, it's a further 2-hour drive north to Bolgatanga, known locally as Bolga, through small villages, roadblocks, and trucks packed precariously high as we're on the main trade route between Ghana and Burkina Faso. We pass a watermelon truck that has crashed, strewing its contents across the road. After arriving in Bolga, it's a further 45 minutes to Sumbrungu, on bumpy dirt roads and through fields, until we reach a tiny patch of land near the border with Burkina Faso, where a group of women sit weaving with their children under the shade of a large tree. It is close to noon by the time we arrive, a full 24 hours since we left, and it is a sweltering 38 degrees in the shade. You would struggle to find this enclave on a map, and the women walk to gather here from miles around. As we approach, Rose, the leader of the group, summons the women to form a circle, and they begin to sing and dance, their skirts a bright riot of color. You and I are swept up in the spirit, dancing in the middle of the circle, engulfed by song and laughter. The children, from toddlers to teenagers, stand by the sidelines and watch as their mothers sing and dance. And a rather more unusual spectacle, these foreign visitors join in with a somewhat different sense of rhythm. Hopefully, I'm not offending your dancing skills here, but I will clearly never have the moves. As the singing winds down, the women potter back to their mats and commence weaving again. Sweaty but exhilarated, you begin to focus on the work at hand. The weavers are now making beautiful baskets in hues of magenta, ochre, and teal. The straw had been dyed in a giant bubbling cauldron and then left to dry in the sun just a few days ago. While the basket weaving has been passed down from generation to generation in the area around Bolga, this collective is a recent innovation. Previously, the women would work alone in their own homes and be underpaid at best and cheated at worst. Remember that 45-minute drive it took to get to Sumbrungu? They would walk it each way, leaving home at 6 a.m., arriving in Bolga at 10, and then returning on the same 4-hour trek by foot after haggling with traders. The pay would sometimes even fail to cover the cost of the next baskets, the next straw, let alone basic necessities like school shoes and food for their families. So what has changed with the collective? Today, the women work together as a group. As they were previously underpaid and performed unpaid labor at home, some of them were forced to go to cities like Kumasi, a 10-hour drive south, to sell petty goods in the street, leaving them in a vulnerable position for very little money. No longer at such risk of exploitation or isolated in their own homes, they're now able to come together, motivate each other, and help each other with new designs. The straw, which is made from elephant grass, which is now rarely found in the north of Ghana due to the effects of climate change, is provided directly to the collective by motorbike. By providing ample, high-quality straw, they are able to weave a better quality basket without the burden of traveling long distances. Access to new markets. Previously, those baskets were destined to local market traders. Today, they're sold in boutiques in London and Geneva and online from the UK to Australia to the US to Europe. They are championed by actresses and social media influencers. But most profoundly of all, they are now fairly paid for their work. Prior to the collective, they had to source their own raw materials, including the straw, dye, and leather. In a best-case scenario, they would earn a quarter of what they are earning today. In addition to this fair wage and working environment, they're also gaining access to education and tools like bank accounts. Many of the women in the collective are illiterate, and few have had more than several years of schooling. They're opening bank accounts, often for the first time in their lives. Women thrive when they gain control over their financial resources. Equally, families thrive and well-being improves when they gain control over their reproductive choices. So the collective provides sexual and reproductive health education. Rose, the leader of the group, which now comprises over 100 women in Simbungu alone, has long been an advocate for women in her community. To her, these fair wages are fundamental to its growth and well-being. In her own words, we eat from the baskets. Our child's education comes from the baskets. Our clothes come from the baskets. Rose explains that previously, many of the women did unpaid work on family farms. A third of them are single mothers, having lost their husbands to disease, accidents, polygamous marriage, and abandonment. Their husbands, if alive, are subsistence farmers. In many cases, subsistence is a generous term, as the food rarely lasts more than a few months past the harvest, particularly in a year like this one, where devastating floods affected the region last July and August. Families faced the prospect of having to borrow money or going to bed hungry when food ran out. Today, Rose repeats, and a number of the women here today will reiterate, the baskets mean they will no longer face the fear of hunger. Their children will stay in school, and their futures will be transformed. Standing by Rose's side is Madam Rita, the government-appointed girl-child education officer from nearby Bongo, who simply states, when women are empowered, children are protected. When women are empowered, children are protected. She succinctly articulates the value of girls' education, which is grounded in hard evidence. Girls who are educated, marry later, have smaller, healthier families, and are 3 times less likely to contract HIV/AIDS. It is now universally recognized that girls' education is the closest thing we have to a holy grail, the investment that delivers the greatest returns, vital to ending extreme poverty and meeting the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. Still, you may think, what is an education officer doing with us here today with this basket weaving collective? Madam Rita is here because she knows that it was the opportunity for one young woman to pursue her education that led to the establishment of this collective and several others. Madam Rita met this young woman, Dorcas Apur, as a bright and driven student in senior high school. Dorcas grew up in the context of rural poverty. She lost 3 of her 8 siblings to infection and disease. In order to pay her own high school fees, she had to undertake back-breaking work in illegal mines. It was impossible to dare imagine that Dorcas would be able to continue her education until Madam Rita connected her with CAMFED, the Campaign for Female Education. In 2015, CAMFED support enabled Dorcas to pursue development studies at the University of Wa, where she graduated top female in her class. Soon after going to university, she joined CAMA, the CAMFED Alumna Association, where she found inspiration from a like-minded group of young women harnessing their inner strength to bring about real and lasting change in their communities. An awareness of a difference that an education would have made to her own mother strengthened Dorcas's resolve to help teenage mothers and victims of child marriage. Together with fellow CAMA members, she meets with students, parents, and other community members to impress upon them the negative consequences of child marriage and teen pregnancy and the importance of girls' education. To date, she has personally assisted 6 teenage mothers to return to school. Dorcas established her NGO, Advocacy for Social Inclusion and Girls' Education, ASIGE, in her home district in the Upper East region. When it comes to social exclusion, Dorcas is clear that poverty is the root cause. Not being able to afford an education brings with it a lack of confidence and a lack of knowledge about how to access services and support. So how is the ASIGE addressing this? Through livelihood opportunities like the Basket Weaving Collective, and through education opportunities like the financial literacy training and sexual and reproductive health sessions. In addition, they established a sanitary pad center to help address the fact that girls are missing school due to period poverty. For each basket purchased here, local seamstresses make a reusable sanitary pad kit that lasts up to 3 years, helping to keep girls in school and providing another livelihood opportunity for the seamstresses. Through all these initiatives, Dorcas is helping to turn the tide of poverty in her community. She does not stand alone. Today, the young women of CAMA, the CAMFED Alumna Association, are leading their own social movement, creating change not only in their own lives, but also in those of their families, communities, nations, and even on an international stage. As the true experts in the challenges that girls and young women face, they are instrumental to creating sustainable development. They understand what it means to grow up in the context of rural poverty and the potential that education can unlock. Sustainability can be seen in the fact that within 3 years, 744,142 girls have been supported to go to secondary school in rural Ghana, Tanzania, Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe by the Campaign for Female Education. Of those, 204,012, less than a third, were directly supported by donors, and the remainder by community members and CAMA members themselves, thereby multiplying the investment in girls' education through their commitment to developing their own communities. Together, they know how to bridge the yawning gap between a burning desire for education and deep material poverty. They understand how a girl's circumstances can lead to a lack of a sense of entitlement to a quality, safe education free from physical, emotional, or sexual violence. They have experienced the deeply entrenched alienation from government systems with parents who have only had a few years of formal schooling, if anything. I'm embarrassed to admit that nearly a decade ago, while I was deciding on my own daughter's education, meticulously considering Montessori versus traditional preschool, town versus country, all with the benefit of studying at a graduate level, I had little appreciation of the sheer scale of the injustice facing tens of millions of girls globally who do not have access to any education. Together, we, all of us, need to ensure that girls understand that they are entitled to their education, not indebted to anyone for the chance to go to school. Education is a universal human right, as much for Alanafi and her friends here in Malawi as it is for any other child in the world. It is a matter of social justice. The young women of Kama established their network of rural, educated women to rival any old boys' network. Instead of oak-paneled clubs and discreet connections, it is a vibrant and visible source of empowerment in communities across sub-Saharan Africa. Kama is a vital sisterhood, an emotional support network, and a learning platform, providing resources and grants for young women to make the transition from school to secure livelihoods to leadership positions. Already, 120,000 strong, with a constitution and elected officials, Kama is a force to be reckoned with, not least because they are at the forefront of CAMFED's programs, making up 25% of its executive leadership, including the formidable Angeline Muramirwa from Zimbabwe, a founding member of the Kama network. Girls and young women like Dorcas stand right beside her. They don't just advocate for education, but take concrete action, mentoring, fundraising for more children to go to school, setting up social enterprises like the Collective, setting up parent support groups to provide school meals and infrastructure, providing adult literacy classes, and protecting vulnerable children by challenging those in authority to listen, to learn, and to do better. They are igniting activism, working to change the status quo, committed to building bridges within their communities, and using their position to replace the vicious cycle of poverty with the virtuous cycle of philanthropy and development from the grassroots up. The Campaign for Female Education may be registered as a charity, but fundamentally, it is a movement. This movement multiplies the power of one educated girl like Dorcas by ensuring that she is listened to, respected, and nurtured by a like-minded collective of changemakers who have each other's backs. Behind them, and now led by them, is an organization with the resources, infrastructure, and partnerships to open the door for the fierce and fearless to walk through and ensure that they never stand alone. In this context, donor resources are more than matched. They are endlessly multiplied. So, when we finally say goodbye to Rose, Madam Rita, and Dorcas, I know that I will never look at the world in the same way again. If one young woman like Dorcas, at 23, from the most marginalized background imaginable, can ignite this level of change in her community, then what can the rest of us do? It all starts with girls' education and having each other's backs. Together, we can change the world.